It's a great question. I think one is just the starting place would be that being involved in agriculture doesn't mean you have to be a farmer, right? And wanting to start your own farm is, unless you have millions of dollars lying around, is a very difficult thing to do. It is a small group relative to Canadian population. But there's so many career opportunities within agriculture. Agriculture is a critical industry, however you want to kind of define that. We're very lucky in Canada that the province of Saskatchewan alone could feed Canada on an annual basis 3 times over. But 70% of all agriculture production is exported. It's 90% for my folks. But there's so many jobs that are in the agriculture sector that aren't directly related to farming, whether it's being a lobbyist, a lawyer, marketing. There's the amount of science that goes into the sector is staggering. The amount of focus on environmental science, the opportunities for people interested in plant science or agronomy is just huge. So there's a lot of different opportunities. I think we're seeing more and more young people and more universities offering really competitive agriculture programs. There's certainly the U of A, University of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Guelph, at McGill too. There's a lot of people getting interested in agriculture. And the last thing I pitch is that there's money to be had in the sector. Agriculture is bigger than auto and aerospace combined. With a $135 billion industry, 1 in 8 Canadian jobs, about 7% of our GDP is agriculture. The largest manufacturing sector in Canada is food manufacturing, and those are good jobs, high-paying jobs. Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal are where the predominant that is done. So just that agriculture, it's so important. I think we have both a moral and economic obligation to grow more here. More Canada abroad, I think, is a good thing. But there's just so many diverse roles and opportunities that can be there, whether you go to law school, whether you go poli-sci for me, whether you go environmental sciences. There's so many opportunities there to work in agriculture. Doesn't mean that you have to work on a farm. I'm from Toronto originally, and been in agriculture since 2012 because I chose it as something to do post politics, and it's worked out well. And it's a hard thing to not feel good about advocating for if you get into the lobbying side of things, right? I lobby for farmers every day. Previously, I lobbied for the life science companies that produce the innovations that farmers plant. So I think it's also, if it's a career you're interested in, you sleep pretty good at night knowing you're advocating for Canadian food, farmers, food, fuel, fiber. It's a pretty good space to be in. Certainly, so canola is an invention of Canada. It was actually developed by 2 universities. Canola is over 95% of all canola is biotechnology, which is kind of cool that it's all 95% of canola is GMO. It's also the heart healthy cooking oil. And as we look at hopefully getting clear guidance on using gene editing, canola's sort of biggest downfall is that it requires a lot of nitrogen to grow, nitrogen-based fertilizers, which are expensive, etc. Or some other crops, like some like peas and lentils, fix nitrogen, soybeans. So if you actually can use gene editing, and canola either needs to use less nitrogen or can fix some of its own, that's where a lot of the innovations will come. And what's really cool about canola versus other commodities is that a lot of the times, Canada's sort of playing catch up. Like we're 5th in the world, we're the 5th largest exporter of food in the world right now in agricultural products. We should be higher than that. We should get back to being higher than that. But we're often chasing the US, Brazil, China, and sort of the big commodities, the soy and cattle. Canola is a Canadian invention, and Canada controls 60% of the world's trade of canola. Our biggest competitor is Australia, and the US is 3rd. So it's actually one of those places, one of those crops that Canada's really carved a niche for it, and we are the global leaders. We're the global players. The innovation comes to Canada. The thought leadership is in Canada. Our farmers are viewed by our export markets, our biggest export markets being the US, Mexico, China, Japan, and in the European Union. They look to us for that thought leadership, which is unique in Canada, because often with only 36 million people, we're 5th or 6th or 10th or 20th. In canola, we're the world's #1, but Australia is our biggest competitor, and they're a lot closer to a lot of our big markets like China and Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia. So that they forces us to remain innovative and competitive too. So we're just at the tail end of the federal government coming out with their clean fuel regulations, which are sort of the apparatus that works. And every province also has for most provinces to have a mandate for a certain level of biofuels, which is basically using a feedstock to blend with diesel for the transportation sector. So that'd be canola, soy, corn, corn for ethanol. You see it in gasoline a lot. What's really interesting is that canola is actually the best field crop at sequestering carbon. It's got a really deep root system, and we plant so much of it that actually sucks a lot of carbon in. So with canola, what we can do is take it to a processor. They then crush the canola. It's a black seed. You crush it. You get two byproducts. You get the oil that comes out of it, about 60% of that little black seed's oil. And you get the meal, which is basically the crushed husk. That meal is great for animal feed. In Canada, what we've also done a really good job of in the past is, for every commodity, oil and gas being a huge one, is we export the raw product and then we import it back at a value add, right? We've imported it back, but we've essentially exported those value added jobs. And again, oil and gas is a great example where we're not refining it. If you live in my part of the world, you probably never put Canadian gas in your car because I live east of Sarnia and the pipeline stops there, right? So what's really interesting with canola is if we are able to use it more in biofuels, is that those jobs get created here. About over $2 billion worth of new crush plants in Saskatchewan alone, that instead of farmers exporting raw seed, we'll be crushing it here, creating those value-added jobs here, and then we're exporting oil, which is a value-added product. We also get to keep that meal, which we could then sell into the animal feed market. It's also actually being looked at for more and more human consumption, and actually canola oil is also being tested in bioplastics and also in drilling in the oil and gas sector as a lubricant for drills. But it's going well. What's nice about canola through the improvements, the technology, and I'm not an expert. My colleague Steve Pratt certainly is internally, is that canola can be blended at a high rate with diesel, and it has no implications for the functionality or the mileage that you get. And canola as an additive to diesel is actually, it burns 90% cleaner than just using traditional diesel alone. So it's not that oil and gas is bad. It's that this is a great marketing tool for the oil and gas sector. It extends the lifespan potentially of petroleum products, but it's also just a way for oil and gas companies, I think, to sort of show their leadership in the space, as a lot of them are committing to net zero and this and that. So we work very closely with the oil and gas sector. And again, seeing that, I believe Imperial Oil's plant that they announced at Edmonton, once up and running, will be producing 20,000 barrels of oil of renewable diesel a day, and canola will figure very prominently, as will forest products and wheat and this and that. But canola is arguably the best feedstock. So it's going quite well. And again, when we look at our trade irritants for canola, most of the non-tariff trade barriers we experience are actually exporting raw seed. It's where we get into, it's called SPS, or sanitary, phytosanitary issues with countries. Exporting oil, we don't have as much. It would actually also reduce our reliance on the rail system, because more oil would go south to the US by truck as opposed to rail for raw products. So yeah, it's an exciting sector. And again, I just like the idea of building processing facilities in Canada, good jobs in Canada, taking a product, value adding here, changing our export dynamic, having new opportunities, as opposed to just exporting a raw product to the EU, who then crushes it, or Japan, who then crushes it to do their own. So yeah, it's an exciting time in that space. There's still a few things we need to get right with some of the guidance documents related to clean fuel regs, but we're working on that so that they come online in 2024, and we're good to go. Thing, it's just get involved in whatever capacity or whatever your ability is, right? Not everyone can be based in Ottawa or based near a legislature to do this for a living. So getting involved in whatever that means. And it goes back to what I said a bit earlier, was know who your elected politicians are, whether that's like, I'm on a first name basis with my city councilor, my MVP, and my MP. We don't necessarily agree on everything, but Jessica, John, and David know that if I have an issue, it's an email or a text message to bring that, whether it's an issue in my local community, an issue was a vote at Queen's Park or a vote in Parliament Hill. And you don't have to become an expert lobbyist to do that. But as I said, just go and sit down with your city councilor or your MP or your MLA, whatever, I guess, sort of low level of government you're fighting, either you're having the most difficulty with, or you see the biggest opportunities there. Establish relationships before you have an issue. There's a lot of different meeting types that we do here. We spend our days in meetings. Most of those meetings are introductory, and we kind of cover the waterfront to describe that. It's so much easier once you have a pre-existing relationship to then have a tough conversation, just like it is with anyone. And quite frankly, getting on, some sort of familiarity with your MP think about for yourselves, if you get an email or a text message or a phone call from a colleague or a friend or somebody you've established a relationship with, you're much more likely to get back to them quickly than just a cold, right? Especially if you're getting a cold email, a cold phone call, a cold text message request, and you want me to do something for you, right? So it's much easier if you can establish that relationship. Be involved, get informed. Again, I think National News Watch is a great website, but understand what your MP is doing. There's a website called openparliament.ca. You can see what your MP has been voting on for every vote, right? And if you're able to, it's always great to see young people get involved in their electoral district associations. So the local riding associations, they often hold events. There's not a big cost entry in any of those sort of things. And when it comes to your votes, the vote's important, but often depending on where you are in the world, the nomination is more important than the vote. Getting your nomination is more important than the vote. I have a number of friends seeking nominations right now across Canada. In some ridings, if whoever wins that nomination, it's a safe riding, could be the MP for that party for the next 20 years. So support your local candidates that you think will do the best job to deliver for you, for your community, for your interests. Getting informed, I'd say also try to get out of your comfort zone. It's very easy with media outlets and Twitter. Like if you go on Twitter and you don't like what you're seeing, you've done that to yourself because you kind of curated that sort of thing. It is also, I think, we tend to like to read or listen to things that we agree with, right? It's, if you have a political leaning, maybe you can kind of tell on an airplane in Ottawa, someone reading the Globe or the National Post, you can kind of pick their political leanings a little bit. Do they right of center, left of center? Challenge yourself and read different things, look at different opinions, right? Because I think it's so easy to just get entrenched in our thinking. I think as a young person, especially if you're able to sort of, I'm not young anymore, I'm in my 36, but if you're able to stay, keep an open mind to things, right? Because I think there are so many good people in every federal political party right now. Like the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture, it has never been a better group of the key leaders there. The Bloc Québécois, Yves Perron, is a fantastic guy, very interested in things outside of Quebec, voted in favor of Bill 234, even though it's no impact on his province. The NDP agriculture critic, Alistair McGregor, is from Vancouver Island, and is pro modern agriculture, prairie agriculture. The committee chair of that Liberal from Nova Scotia, no Canola in his riding, very pro because he sees the bigger. Our parliamentary secretary, the minister, Francis Drouin, very pro agriculture. And our shadow minister, John Barlow from Foothills, Alberta, and John and Francis are good friends of mine. But there's good people everywhere. And if you dismiss them because they don't line up with your political leanings, we could have had the most perfect Bill 234 in the world. If only the Conservatives supported it, would have died at second reading. But the Bloc, the NDP, the Green Party, Elizabeth May, they all came to the table and supported this. So just don't get stuck in your own little silos, right? And also, I think the same part, if you do have a political party that you favor more than one, I worked for a political party for a number of years. No one's infallible. I think we tend to have this idea is that whoever your party is, well, once my party gets back in power, all of our problems will be alleviated. Having been doing this professionally the last 14 years, there's problems regardless of the party. So never forget about just good people, right? And I think there's good people across that you might not agree with on every issue, but there's good people in all walks of life and all political parties. And so yeah, just try to get out of your comfort zone a little bit there too. I think it's for the better. Million acres of canola. So that's there's 100 million acres planted every year, and 1 in 5 of that is canola. So 20 million acres of canola. To 10 million Saskatchewan. Then Alberta would be the second biggest, in Manitoba, and then BC and Ontario are a lot smaller. There's little bits of canola in Quebec and the Maritimes, but it's the largest agriculture commodity by economics, but also by planted acres. So, which is why it has. We look at the canola sector as a whole, its ability to sequester carbon because of its deep root system, and the fact that it's planted on 20 million acres is significant. So yeah, canola is the largest planted crop. It's also one of the most expensive to grow. Canola is a very expensive crop to purchase, expensive crop to grow, but it has that the characteristics are there that it's also a premium product at the end. and it helps that Canada's a leader. But yeah, 20 million acres on an annual basis, and we don't. Part of our goals, sustainability goals, is we don't actually want to see that acreage increase. We want to see intensification, so getting more out of every acre, more yield out of every acre. We're not looking to get to 25 million acres. We're looking to get, about 20 million acres, 20 million tons on an annual basis. We'd like to get to 25 million tons on 20 million acres. So intensification, we don't necessarily want to break new ground. And it's also really important. Farmers can't plant canola and canola and canola. They rotate their crops through for soil health for a number of reasons. So, but yeah, it's a big. I mean, you drive through the prairies in the summer when it's in bloom; those fields are yellow, right? It's a pretty flower too. Well, it's the advent of technology. So the biggest thing that happened for agriculture in Canada was the adoption of conservation or tillage or no-till, which means that when 2 generations ago, when they were planting their fields, they had to take a plow and plow everything up to get all the soil ready for planting, kill the weeds and this and that. As we got biotechnology, as we got herbicide resistance and products that aren't necessarily sometimes popular in the public sphere, farmers what they are able to do is we take seed that's been treated with a little bit of crop protection product. They plant it right into the previous year. They don't touch the ground. They plant right into the stubble, the kind of residual crop from the last year. And because it's got a crop protection product, the weeds don't kill it, the bugs don't eat it, and it's able to grow, which means that we're not disturbing that soil and releasing the carbon. That's made a huge difference, but it's technology. It's farmers being able to plant seed directly into ground without disturbing it. It's farmers using things like precision agriculture, which should be using like GPS and global imaging, doing soil testing, knowing exactly where they need to apply fertilizer and where they don't, exactly where they need to provide crop protection products and where they don't. The inside of a modern day combine or a planter, which farmers use to either harvest or plant their product, it's iPad screens and monitors and moisture levels, and everything is there. How we're going to get further is through continued research in agronomics, which is basically looking at plant health. I think the big one for canola and for Canada will be gene editing. GMO is very expensive. There's only a few companies that are big enough to do it. Gene editing is something that a high school student could do if had the proclivity for it. So I think it'll be a combination of genetics, a combination of better products, a combination of better machinery, all those sort of things, and just understanding more about what happens in the soil and what why does a plant fail, why does a plant do well. So a lot of research and development too. That's how we're going to kind of continue getting there. But it's been the adoption actually of biotechnology or genetically modified organisms has allowed us to not have to do all that tillage and all that sort of thing. So again, innovation has to also be viewed in the agriculture space. We have to go through all the prerequisite environmental and health approvals, don't get me wrong, but we can't shut down science based on misguided notions around social, around public trust and things. Like science is science, and the more we stick to that, I think the better we all are.
Awesome. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's all of the questions that we have for today. I think we're running pretty much at exactly where we want it to end. So I just wanted to say thank you so much again, Dave, for coming and joining us today. It's honestly been a really informative talk, and I learned more about canola definitely than I knew before. And yeah, we just wanted to, I guess, give you the chance here to maybe, plug any last socials or any resources that, you think young Canadians should use in the future if they're looking to learn more about, your industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the previous slide, our website, we strive for transparency. So all of our submissions to the federal government, we publish on our website so that there's, and it speaks to the different sort of topics that we speak to. I think generally it's just, if you want to learn more about agriculture at a general kind of high level, there's an organization called Real Agriculture. It's big on social media. They've got a radio station. They've got all this sort of stuff. A guy named Sean Haney found it, runs it. I think people are always surprised at the sort of the depth, the different policy files that are agriculture. It's not just about farming; it's about a lot. I mean, that's the cornerstone, but there's a lot of other parts. But yeah, I mean, whatever sector you get into, there's some key tools I think we discussed today that are applicable regardless of your sector, right? How you approach things, how to get informed. And I just say, yeah, if you're interested in politics, don't complain about it on Twitter. Go and do something about it, right? If you're interested, it doesn't take a lot of effort to meet with your local representatives. It pays dividends, certainly if you have an issue. My father-in-law, as a small business owner, had issues. We helped him establish relationships, and now he's sort of future-proofed because of that. But yeah, I think more Canadians, I don't say more young Canadians because that sounds condescending, but I think we'll all be better off if we take more responsibility for what we don't like, right? If you don't like something, I tell my kids, you complain about it 3 times, then what's your solution? Two sisters arguing or whatever it might be. The same thing with everything else. It's like, don't bring me issues, don't bring me challenges without a solution, right? I think the more we start repositioning our sort of frame of reference, or our thinking of, I don't like what's happening in Ottawa, what can I do about it? And you do have, your vote does matter, but also does your engagement, whether nomination process or, and if you don't like the member of parliament because of the party your MP is from a different party and that's not your party of choice, please still go meet with them, right? Like, they still do work for you. And then lastly, just get involved in whatever way makes sense, right? Not everyone can be on a board or on an electoral riding association, but if you're able to, it is a good use of your time. The networking alone, the amount of people that benefited from volunteering for campaigns, volunteering for nomination, getting involved, that are now chiefs of staff, vice presidents, directors of GR, whatever it might be, from very humble beginnings of just being curious and willing to kind of put your money where your mouth is in some regards, of just being like, I want to get off the sidelines, and if you want to do it, you don't have to go all the way in. You can test the waters. I think the more political engagement we have in Canada, regardless of your politics, the better we'll be for it. So that would be where I'd leave you today. And but National News Watch, great way for balanced information. That every political staffer, I look at that website like 6 times a day, just seeing, because you can't keep track of everything yourself. It's a great way. I end up reading articles that I probably never would, just because maybe I wouldn't think that outlet would be of interest to me, and they've got a trending story of a topic of interest, and you get a different opinion. You might not agree with it, but it's healthy, I think, to have that discourse. So that's it. I appreciate being invited on today, and I hope everyone got a little bit of something for it.
Yeah, that was awesome, Dave. And I 100% agree. If you have a problem, don't just complain and then shut off your contact with, everyone. Just, you need to offer solutions as well. Like, offering solutions is also a big part of it. So I 100% agree. And thank you so much for joining us today. So thank you so much, everyone in the audience as well. We'll be back next week with another Food for Thought, same time, I guess same place, because we do them all online. So thank you so much, Dave, once again, and everybody have a great rest of your day.